of Thingol and Melian, a mythic romance.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a legendary romance from Tolkien's lore that literally changed the destiny of an entire world. For those of us who live and breathe Middle-earth history, you know this isn't just some run-of-the-mill love story. No, this is a foundational cosmic event. We're looking at how two completely different beings crossed paths, shattered the political landscape of the Elves, and injected a strain of divine magic right into the mortal lands. And you know what? We're skipping the usual backstory today so we can dive straight into the sheer ethereal power of Melian. I mean, this is a being so incredibly enchanting that the gods themselves, the Valar, literally put their tools down to listen to her. The birds of Valinor stopped singing, the bells went totally silent, and even the fountains just ceased flowing. All of this happened at the mingling of the lights, which is a time of immense magical resonance. Melian wasn't just hanging out in the gardens of Lorien, she was its absolute most beautiful, wise, and skilled voice. We are talking staggering levels of power here.
Now let's look at this setup, because the contrast between these two before they meet is just, wow, it's almost unimaginable. On one side you have Melian. She's a Maia, possessing the light of Aemon, wielding magic and song that can literally halt the heavens. And then, on the other side, we have Elwë. Now don't get me wrong, Elwë's a big deal in his own right. He's the lord of the Teleri, leading a massive elven host. But at the end of the day, he's an elf, a wanderer making his way through the forests of Middle-earth. These two are existing on completely different planes of reality.
So let's dig into Melian's side of things. She's a divine Maia, akin to Yavanna, dating back to before the physical world was even a concept. Remember, the Maia are essentially angelic, fundamental beings of creation. But the absolute game-changer with Melian is her choice. While most were playing it safe in the blessed realm of Valinor, Melian actually packed up and left for the Hitherlands. She loved the deep shadows of the ancient trees, and she always traveled with nightingales. She actually taught them how to sing. She wandered out into Middle-earth to fill its deep, pre-dawn silence with her voice and the songs of her birds.
Then, over on the other side of this fated collision, we have Elwë. His people, the Teleri, were taking a much-needed break in East Beleriand after a really grueling migration. But Elwë? He was a bit of a wanderer. He was basically just taking a shortcut through the woods to go hang out with his best friend Finwë, who lived nearby. Just a totally normal, routine journey, right? Except he happens to stray into the dark, starlit wood of Nan Elmoth, stumbling right into a destiny that would completely reshape the world.
Let's break down how this goes from a casual stroll in the woods to a literal time-stopping encounter. Check out this timeline. First, totally out of nowhere, Elwë hears the song of the nightingales. In mere seconds, boom, an enchantment hits him and freezes him in his tracks. Then, just a few minutes later, from far off, he catches the sound of Melian's voice. It hits him with this overwhelming wonder and a fierce, undeniable desire. He follows that sound deep into the shadows until he hits a clearing, completely open to the stars. He looks into the darkness, sees her, and in that one shattering moment, he sees the actual light of Aemon in her face. And finally, he steps forward, takes her hand, and plunges them both into the longest, craziest phase of this whole event.
So the crucial takeaway here is that an incredibly heavy enchantment falls on Elwë the second he hears her voice. It just pulls him entirely out of his own life. You can really feel the absolute erasure of his past here. I mean, think about it. He was a lord of a massive host of elves in the middle of a continent-spanning migration. He had a whole kingdom waiting for him and a best friend he was literally on his way to see. And in a fraction of a second, poof, none of it mattered. The spell of her presence simply washed all his worldly purposes completely away.
Okay, we really need to pause here to let the sheer, silent weight of this sink in. Because this is wild. They spoke absolutely no words. Elwë just walked up, full of love, took her hand, and straightway a spell was laid upon him. They just stood there, holding hands, in a starlit glade. And we are not talking about a few hours or even days here. Long years, literally years, were measured by the wheeling stars above them. The trees of Nan Elmoth actually grew tall and dark all around them before either of them spoke a single word. It's just a breathtaking image, isn't it? Time completely standing still for love, while the physical world just relentlessly marches on around them.
Eventually, breaking that long silence, let's look at the explosive historical and political fallout from this union. It was a massive deal. It instantly fractured the Elven leadership. Because Elwë just essentially vanished, his brother Olwë had to step up, take the kingship of the Teleri, and lead them away without him. Elwë never crossed the Sea of Valinor, and Melian never went back while their realm lasted. But here is the absolute most vital takeaway for us Tolkien fans. Because of this union, a direct strain of the Ainur, the literal blood of the gods who were there before the universe even began, entered into the bloodlines of elves and men. So if you've ever found yourself wondering where legendary figures like Elrond or Aragorn get their mythic, almost divine lineage, it starts right here. Melian and Elwë rooted divine power directly into the soil of Middle-earth, and they eventually built their glorious hidden halls, Menegroth, the Thousand Caves.
Now, to really understand their new realm, we've got to define exactly who they were ruling. When Elwë finally emerged from those woods, he was a renowned king, and all the elves of Beleriand who had stayed behind basically became his people. They became known as the Sindar, the Grey-elves, or the Elves of the Twilight. And Elwë himself took on a brand new name in the local tongue, Thingol, which translates to King Greymantle.
And with Melian by his side as queen, things were entirely different. I mean, she was infinitely wiser than any child of Middle-earth, and she lent all that immense power and magic to Thingol. This union made him utterly unique among his people. Even though he was technically king of the elves who never finished the journey west, he wasn't really counted among the elves of darkness. Why? Because out of all the Sindar, he was the only one who had actually seen the trees of Valinor, reflected directly in the light of Amon on Melian's face. In Tolkien's world, that light is a massive deal. It represents divine truth and majesty. Carrying that memory elevated Thingol way above all the other rulers in Middle-earth. Together, the two of them ruled Doriath, perfectly bridging the gap between the divine light of the West and the starlit twilight of Middle-earth.
But the absolute culmination of this mythic romance wasn't just a kingdom. No, it was a legacy bound in flesh. The merging of a starlit elf and a divine Maia produced something entirely unprecedented in the history of the world. It led to the birth of a child whose beauty would surpass anyone before or since, literally the fairest of all the children of Ilúvatar that was or shall ever be.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering mystery to ponder. Exactly who was this child born of twilight and divine light? And how would her existence, carrying the literal bloodline of the gods, go on to shape the entire rest of Middle-earth's history? How did she drive both its greatest heroics and its absolutely most devastating tragedies? It is a huge question, one that echoes through all the ages that follow, and it definitely demands we keep exploring. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the lore.